so I just got to witness the first 2 episodes of the new Lord of the Rings show, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, in theaters. I got to see them in theaters. The first 2 episodes drop this Friday on Amazon Prime. The Rings of Power is set thousands of years before the events of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It begins during a time of relative peace and covers all the major events of Middle-earth's Second Age. The forging of the Rings of Power, the rise of the Dark Lord Sauron, the fall of the island kingdom of Numenor, and the last alliance between elves and men. Look, this series is going to be nowhere near as good as the phenomenal masterpiece that is the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and you can put further adjectives in there if you watch the extended editions of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Nothing is ever going to match that greatness. The Hobbit trilogy is not going to match that greatness, and I feel like that's what people didn't understand when those movies came out. They were never going to be as good as Lord of the Rings. I get that they're prequels, you have to tie them in somehow. Obviously, you're writing 3 movies based off of 1 book that takes place before Lord of the Rings, but that doesn't make the Hobbit movies bad. Just because they're not as good as Lord of the Rings doesn't make them bad. And just because this show is not as good as Lord of the Rings doesn't make it bad either. The production value is still top-notch. Fucking gorgeous cinematography, my God, man, those camera shots with the vast landscapes. Film this in New Zealand, man. New Zealand, I want to go to New Zealand now just to see some of these gorgeous, gorgeous places that New Zealand has to offer. Man, holy shit. But what I did like about the show is that we got a bit of familiarity with the show. We saw some characters from Lord of the Rings that are actually in this. If you don't want to know this, I would say fast forward to maybe like 20 seconds later, but there are characters like Galadriel, Elrond, Kellen Brimbor comes in this show. It was really interesting to see their roles in this time period of Middle-earth. And it was really interesting to see what Middle-earth had to offer in this time period too. The different factions of different people and creatures and dwarves and elves and whatever it may be, and where Middle-earth stood at this point in time. It was interesting to just be brought back to Middle-earth. There's cities in here that look like Rivendell. I'm like, oh sweet, we're back in Rivendell. But then there's a title card that tells you it's not Rivendell. Look, I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fanboy. I love the movies, but I'm not one that's gonna be like, actually, that's, such and such, you're wrong if you think that's Rivendell. No, I'm not that type of person. Because seriously, I seriously thought it was Rivendell, but this is a different age, this is a different time period of Middle-earth. It's not gonna be the same as everything in Lord of the Rings. But it was interesting to see the different places that this time period of Middle-earth had to offer, and just being brought back into Middle-earth. It felt like this warm, comforting place despite that sense of darkness surrounding it and this threat that's happening. Seeing familiar locations too, not gonna spoil anything. There was a location where I was like, oh my god, that looks like that place from Lord of the Rings. And it was that place, but like thousands of years before. So it looks different, but it looks the same, if you know what I mean. And it wasn't just fan service for the sake of fan service's sake. These locations, these characters, they serve the story very well. And it's interesting to see where the story is going to go, because I think with these first 2 episodes, everybody's going to be like, well, the show's called Rings of Power, and where are the Rings of Power? I feel like with TV shows nowadays, people are just impatient. They want everything right away. We're 2 episodes into a 9-episode season, which will probably be a multi-season TV show. I would guess you're not going to get everything you want right out of the gate in the first 2 episodes, or even in this first season. You just have to learn to go with it. The first episode I felt was a little bit slow. It didn't seem as involving as Lord of the Rings. Like, it doesn't seem as fast-paced as Lord of the Rings, so the story might not feel as interesting in that regard, but I am interested to see where these characters end up, where some of the characters that are introduced at the end of the first episode and in the second episode end up by the end of the season. It does start off a little bit slow, so I can see people being like, dude, is this going anywhere? It's not that interesting. I do think that both, obviously Lord of the Rings, but The Hobbit as well, has a better story in place at this point. Like, if you take Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, splice those movies up, turn them into episodes of TV shows, where we are at this point in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, obviously. I feel like the story isn't grinding itself out at all. I feel like we're actually getting to places where this, it feels like it's taking more of its time. It doesn't have as fast or fresh of a pace as those two trilogies do. But I am happy that we are back in Middle Earth. I like a lot of the characters so far. I like the setting so far. I like the connections to Lord of the Rings, and I'm just curious to see what is going to fall into place, where this series is going to go, where this season is going to go. Just warms my heart to be back in a fantasy world again like this. So, Rings of Power, are you guys going to watch it on Friday? Drop me some feedback in the comment section below if you are going to watch it, and when you do watch it, I want to know what you think. I will leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.